So we got through chapter 2. We made it. We survived. Now we go to talk about overseers or bishops. Ron has dodged it. I guess the field saved him from... I don't remember any of you ladies... Well, you weren't here up here last week, were you, Debbie? You weren't up here for last week? Okay, so you dodged the women talk last week, and now Ron's going to dodge the elder talk tonight. But 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, we could probably throw in, because presumably we will be going into 2 Timothy probably after 1 Timothy, and then Titus. But we will throw in Titus 1, 6 through 9 with our discussion here. Whether we actually go there or not, those two go together. So if you make notes in your Bible, which I would also encourage, I didn't do that for a very long time, but I started doing that, and it is very helpful. Titus 1, 6 through 9 is the parallel to 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, because those are the two sections where Paul deals with the qualifications for a role, work, office of elder. And maybe before we'll just look at verse 1, and then we'll look at something about who we're talking about here. Because I think I don't think I know. There's a lot of confusion in the religious world about this. Now, there are about 32 qualifications total. 20 clearly distinct qualifications between 1 Timothy 3, 2 through 7 and Titus 1, 6 through 9. 12 positive and 8 negative. But here's how he starts. He starts with his second trustworthy saying or faithful saying. We pointed out the first one earlier in the book. Chapter 1, verse 15. Here's the second one. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. First of all, I'll say there is no word in the Greek text that is translated office. I think most translations say office. It's not the most ideal word because it sort of, I think it can give off maybe wrong impressions. But I think the Greek text, what it says actually is just, if anyone aspires to the oversight, is how the Greek is worded. So in English, it's just sort of put as the office of an overseer. But if anyone aspires to the oversight, he desires something that's noble. But since the English text says overseer, who are we talking about here? Anybody's translation say something different than overseer? Okay, so we got bishop. So there's two now. Bishop, overseer. Those come from the same Greek word. And so there may not be anything else besides bishop and overseer in this verse. Easy to read says elder in 1 Timothy 3, 1. Okay, so there's elder. There's another one. So 3 English words so far. There are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, at least 3 Greek words, all of which refer, and this is the crucial thing, they all refer to the exact same office, for lack of a better word again, same role.
My Bible says position.
Okay, position. So, since the noun isn't there like that, the translators just have to insert a noun of some kind. So we got office, position. He calls it a task there at the end of the verse. So work, and it is a work. It is a work, and that's probably a more ideal way of looking at it rather than an office. An office sounds like I get a title, and even position can kind of be taken as, ooh, I have this elevated position or role, job or whatever where I am above others. That sort of coming at it from the wrong attitude. So, but neither one are. I mean, they're not inherently incorrect, office or position. So.
But the word you have under the word pastor, which also means shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
So how did so many churches start calling their preacher a pastor?
Good question. I don't know.
Okay. I'm sure it's
If I was going to guess, I would say it. I mean, it all stemmed. Well, let's push the brakes real quick. The word translated bishop or overseer is the Greek word episkopos. It means one who has the responsibility of safeguarding or seeing to it that something is done in the correct way. It can also be translated guardian. But there are 3 different Greek terms that all refer to the same role. One is episkopos, translated bishop or overseer. It's used in Acts 20, verse 28. It's used in Philippians 1:1, 1 Timothy 3:1 and 2, and Titus 1:7. The second one is presbyteros. Now, these first 2 words, I mean, does it sound like any words you've heard before? Episkopos? Okay, Episcopal and Presbyterian. Because those come from, obviously, come from this Greek root for whatever reason, traditionally, I don't know. But the words are obviously linked. Joe's up here and her hand instantly shoots up.
Well, you skipped over an interesting word.
Already?
Yeah. If anyone aspires.
Okay.
And when you look at what that word means, it's a goal or a training, or it's something that you try to achieve. So in other words, we need to train our young men that this is the highest achievement on this earth that we can do, or that they can do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to aspire to something means you want it. You long for it. An aspiring, astronaut, is somebody who wants to
But
be.
in all those categories, when you aspire, you train, you work for,
Yeah.
you try to meet the qualifications that are necessary for the office.
Yeah. Yeah. Dean?
Shouldn't we all aspire to be a Christian?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just it here, the aspire, of course, to the office, and also just being a Christian. That the overseer and that, I know a lot of people try to place that individual higher than anyone, but he's just another Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Except for women. We
Well,
took care of that last week.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, so, I'm talking basically though, as being a Christian, though, aspire, that we should, all
Yeah.
try to aspire to
Christian comes first. But congregations need overseers. So the way this is a good indication. We talked about a pattern. This is a pattern here where we read in at least 2 places that Paul, wherever he went and preached and established these congregations, he appointed bishops or elders or overseers or shepherds or pastors or presbyters, if you want. That's an acceptable word, in each church. So that means that, if there need to be shepherds or elders or bishops or overseers in each congregation, who is going to fill that role? And here Paul is giving Timothy this instruction on what kind of man, as we'll see, let's just not even say man yet, what kind of person is eligible to be one of these elders? Yes, sir.
Well, too, we know we all need leadership. The same in the household. That's why the husband was placed over the woman.
Mhm.
He is to be the leader of the family. know here too now, God has used the same principle in the family because we're all a family. So that same principle is true in the church. We need a leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Without leadership, there's nothing.
Yeah, and having appointed leaders in this way isn't an obvious thing or natural thing. God didn't have to set it up like that. We could all, agree that we look after each other. We make sure that we stave off any attacks or false teaching or whatever. We could all do that as a joint effort together. But it was seen as fitting and appropriate for there to be actual appointed men who take on that responsibility like shepherds over a flock. Yeah, Joe?
As a pattern, it was so important to have elders in a location that was the express purpose that Paul sent Titus to Crete. Because I've left you here for you to look out and find these men to make sure that there is someone qualified to make sure that the word is taught.
Yeah.
That's the most important part of what a leader must do, is to preserve the treasure that has been given to us.
Mm-hmm. And, they had a slight advantage in the first century because, knowledge was one of the miraculous gifts. Paul talked about, the gifts of the Spirit in the sense of, being able to pass these things on, and knowledge was one of them. So, back then, Paul or the other apostles could, instill this knowledge directly. We don't have that now. So, I think, we use elder as the term. We most often use elder in our congregations. The word elder itself sort of inherently has the idea of age in it, which, as we're going to see here in these qualifications, age isn't really mentioned at all, except for when we get to the, it might be in Titus's, in his, one of the ones in Titus, about his children, but we'll see that whenever we get there. So, anyway, bishop, overseer, shepherd, pastor, elder, and presbyter, if you want. All of those in the New Testament refer to the exact same office or position. They're not different. There's not, well, we have elders, but we also have a bishop, and we also have a pastor. No, not in the first century church. Now, it did not take long. It was, as far as history records, very early on in the 2nd century, this model, this pattern was already being perverted to a bishop over a church. And then it evolved from that to be a bishop over multiple churches, until eventually, as we see now, in some religious circles, like next door, there'll be a bishop or priest or whatever who is over of the parish or whatever, and then above them are, I don't know how their hierarchy works. I've never caught on. I don't know how it goes, bishop, cardinal, whatever. But some would argue, we're talking very early 2nd century. This was happening, and therefore we shouldn't, pass it off. Well, here's as far as I'm concerned, I don't care if it was the year 101 or 100, January of the year 100. If it's different than what Paul said, it's wrong. Okay? So it doesn't matter how early it was. Paul appointed elders or instructed to appoint elders, bishops, overseers in every church. Plural, in every church. Anything different than that is actually directly against Scripture. So, it doesn't matter how quickly I mean, Paul already was telling Timothy, the time is coming when people are not going to want the truth anymore. They're going to start, they're going to have itching ears and so on. So already the seeds of apostasy were being planted and starting to, maybe even starting to blossom a little bit. But whenever we compare places like Acts 20, just so we're clear on this, Acts chapter 20, verse 17 says, "From Miletus," Luke records, "Now from Miletus he sent to Ephesus, Paul sent to Ephesus, and called the elders of the church to come to him." Then in verse 28, verse 28 he says, "Pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers." So, who exactly came to Paul then? Did he call the elders or did he call the overseers, the bishops? It's the same thing. That's the point. Luke says the elders came to Paul at Miletus to talk to him. But Paul called these elders bishops. So bishops and elders are the same thing. And we could see that in other places as well. Maybe one of the most demonstrative ones is 1 Peter 5, 1 and 2, where Peter says this, "I exhort the elders among you," that's the word presbyteros, or some form of it, "as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed. Shepherd the flock," it's a verb, but it's the verb form of shepherd, "that is among you, exercising oversight." All three of those Greek words in the same verse, in the same two verses here, where the elders are to shepherd the flock. That's the verb form of the word pastor. Exercising the oversight. There's the word episkopos or bishop or from that same form. So they all are the same thing. And that is something that the religious community does not understand, it seems. And it also simplifies it a lot, because it's not, you don't have to keep track. Like I just said, I've never really caught on to the hierarchy of the Catholic Church and how all this. Well, no such thing exists in the Christ Church. Just bishops / elders / shepherds / overseers, all the same thing. It's also, we can note here, it's not a bad thing to want to be an elder. Now it might be, depending on why a man wants to be an elder. And if the man wants to be an elder for the wrong reasons, he's not going to meet these qualifications. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's it. We know that you have to desire the office as far as that goes. And we know that some people, you can desire it for the wrong reason, as you've already mentioned. And that's just it. And we know that too here, later on, I don't want to get too far ahead about being a novice or just a new Christian. Well, the thing is, this was just the beginning of the church.
Yeah.
So I think Paul had given most of these men, if they were to choose and set up, he gave them some of the spiritual gifts. And that's what helped them in order to satisfy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, several years had passed, so despite being able to pass knowledge on like that, he still includes here that you shouldn't be a recent convert. So there are obviously, which we'll see when we get there, there are obviously some potential drawbacks. Not every new Christian is going to be puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil if he becomes an elder. But that's beside the point, because Paul says a recent convert is not to be an elder, period. It doesn't matter. So that takes out the figuring side on our part. Well, I know that as a rule that's smart, but I know this brother, and I know he won't be puffed up with conceit. No. Is he a recent convert? The end. The end. Of course, recent is a relative term, so you'd have to, what constitutes a recent convert, and I think relatively speaking, we could determine that with pretty easily. But I also think there are very few occasions where a recent convert's even going to be considered to be appointed to the eldership. Yes, sir.
Well, too, at this time now, the only thing that they had, the Jews, was the old law.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there's a lot of the men that were Jews that had a very good knowledge of the law of Moses, of the law. And so, even though they would, recently became Christians, yet they had a vast knowledge of God's word, following and being part of Moses' law. So, even though they were still just say young as being a Christian, but as far as the knowledge of God and knowing what He wants to do, they were, very knowledgeable of it.
Yep. So, by nailing down that all these things are all the same office, same role. They're the shepherds of the congregation who have authority over the flock, as far as that goes, under the authority of Christ. Any church that deviates from that, there is not Christ's church anymore. And I would add to this, we need to think of these qualifications as pre-qualifications. These are qualifications that are to be met by one who aspires to be an elder, not one who is already an elder. We don't appoint him and then hope that he grows into it. Here's what he says. Number 1, therefore an overseer must be above reproach. Above reproach. The Greek word there, I won't even try to say it, refers to that which cannot be laid hold on, or, the sense is not that he's perfect, but that he is free of any indictable character flaw, to put in the words of Jackson. So there's nothing that somebody would be able to grab hold of and say, aha, he's this or this or this. Above reproach. Number 2, the husband of one wife. Now this is the first, I know we've already been going for almost 30 minutes somehow, and we haven't even, this is the second one. But so far, there's been no indication that it must be a man until now. So, an overseer must be the husband of one wife. The Greek literally says he must be a one-woman man. Now this has led to some dissension for some, because there are different ways that people have interpreted this. Okay? One is that an elder must simply be faithfully married. Okay? That's one interpretation. And just spoiler alert, I would argue that is certainly included in this, but cannot be all that Paul means.
Being faithfully married to their fifth wife.
Yeah. I'm very, very faithful to my 7th wife, or whatever. Of course, that's assuming that, the first 6 didn't, tragically die of something. But the second major interpretation is that an elder must be faithfully married to only one woman. Then the third major interpretation is an elder must be faithfully married to only one woman who is the only wife he has ever had. I can understand those who take number 3 as what Paul means, but I respectfully disagree, because there is nowhere in the Scriptures that downplays or seems to talk down on the concept of a second scriptural marriage. Somebody who's in their second scriptural marriage. In my opinion, some would argue, well, even if the marriage is scriptural, if the man is married to a second woman in his life, then he is not a one-woman man. He's been a two-woman man. Now again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I disagree with that. Yeah, even if he's a widower, they would say that. But in my opinion, it makes most sense and is more logical. A man who is a widower, in his first marriage, he was a one-woman man. His wife dies. He marries again to a woman who is scripturally eligible to be married. Is he not a one-woman man still? Of course, he is still the husband of one wife. I dare anybody to try to argue how this man is not the husband of one wife. You wouldn't be able to do it without trying to twist from the Greek or something. So the point is, he is to be, I guess, in the very least, he's not to be a polygamist. He can't have two wives, right? And I will argue, I will admit, that may be all Paul meant, that he is not to have two wives, two or more wives. He's to have only one wife because that's what's right. It very well may be that that's all that Paul meant by that, although there could be cases against that as well. But certainly he must be married, because if he's not if he's not a husband, then he's not a husband. I mean, if he's not married, he's not a husband.
And it'd have to be scripturally married, or would be...
It has to be scripturally married, because if you're not scripturally married, you're not married. Period. Number 3, and here's where translations are going to get crossed up a little bit. The ESV on number 3 says sober-minded. Now, depending on your translation, you might have sober-minded for number 4. But in the ESV, which I'm using here, sober-minded is the next one. What does it mean to be sober-minded? Some translations say temperate. And unfortunately, I think that's been used more of like moderation. He's moderate in his indulgences or whatever.
That's more like self-control.
Yeah,
Could
and that
mature be substituted for that?
mature.
Sober-minded means that you...
I think that is a sign of maturity. Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Yeah. Obviously, these next two Greek terms can be translated. They're pretty close. They have some overlap. That's why, your translation might say sober-minded for the next one, and temperate or something else for this one, whereas the ESV has sober-minded here for this Greek word, and self-controlled for the next one. But it means clear-headed, this one, and it can mean self-controlled. Sound morals and ethical conduct is the idea that Paul's getting at here. Okay, so the next one, self-controlled. Prudent, thoughtful, self-controlled, curbing one's desires and impulses. Self-controlled, temperate. Wayne Jackson said it suggests a sensible, common sense sort of person. One who has his own impulses under control and who is judicious in his dealings with others. So, above reproach, husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled. Self-controlled being the easiest to understand because it's one of those words that the meaning is built right in. Having control of yourself. Next one, respectable, ESV says. Your translation might say something like orderly. Anything different than respectable and orderly? Yes, you nodded.
Mine says good behavior.
Okay. Of good behavior. The word means respectable, honorable, well-arranged, modest, seemly, decent conduct. So that's where good behavior would come in. He's put together. He's got himself put together. He's again not perfect, but he's not an absolute train wreck of a man, I guess you might say. But his conduct We're seeing a pattern here. Most of these are, with the exception of husband and one wife, these are spiritual character traits, qualifications. Yeah, again, with the exception of husband and one wife, every Christian should be able to meet these. Now, every Christian might not. It doesn't make him ineligible to ever be saved. It does make him ineligible to be an elder, though. So, but every Christian should aspire to meet these, with the exception of husband and wife, especially for you ladies. I would not say you should aspire to that, but I would say even every Christian man should aspire to get married and to have a family and such. Yeah, Joe?
You know, in community dealings, the old phrase, their word was their bond.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, if people knew, if I say I'm going to go do something, I make sure I do it. Because that's integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think that he's basically saying. And even with the concept of husband and wife, you make a vow and you follow through with that, then you have kept your word before God. So I think all of those are entailed with that. I really do feel sorry for Titus, because, I mean, the Cretans were bones. I mean, it was like going to a place where nobody, a bunch of thieves and liars and drunkards and all of that. And yet he was still commanded in every town to find elders. So he had to really search for these people.
Mm-hmm. Ephesus was no cakewalk either, I guess, for that matter. I mean, we know it was a highly idolatrous place. Paul almost lost his life there, or very well would have, probably could have, would have, if he hadn't been dragged out of there when the riot was taking place. So
I'm just saying, sometimes I think people are unrealistic with the concept of what is expected from an elder. One mistake, you're out. I mean, that's not what the Bible teaches.
I've certainly never experienced anything close to that.
Oh,
I think it's quite the opposite as a rule.
you had us live long enough.
Once an elder, always an elder is the general practice, no matter what is done.
Well,
Unless he's been married twice.
unless
Then,
unless
say that
you
sarcastically, yeah.
learn, I mean, how do you put an elder out?
That's a whole other discussion there. Easier said than done, but it is.
Well, the one thing,
What's that?
if he sins, we have the right as a church congregation to take him out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, if he's in sin, that's the key. If he is in sin, then the church. has
An
to-
elder is still a brother, and so must be treated as a brother. And part of that is going to him, telling him his fault, and if need be, I mean, if we follow Jesus' instruction, it may go before the congregation, But the idea, there are cases, and congregations could probably tell, horror stories of an elder who, whether he ever was qualified to be one, presently, it's no debate. He should not be. He has overstayed his welcome or whatever. He is not qualified. But what do you do?
But see,
I don't think congregations are prepared to deal with that.
they don't know how to deal with it, they've never been taught.
Mhm.
But if you have a scriptural congregation, you will have more than one elder. That's just it. There's no such thing as.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah.
People that sat through that stuff, but it's not scriptural. So if you have a sin that you know, it seems to me if you take it before the elders have to resolve it. Now, if there's only two, there's an issue.
Yeah, not ideal. Yeah.
Then I would take it before the congregation. But there is no way I'd throw it out to the world before I went through people who
The church's business should never be thrown out to the world at all,
Well, I mean,
in any case.
we let everybody in the doors all the time. So
Yeah.
anytime you bring it forward, you're throwing it out to the world.
Yeah.
So I think if you have any sense at all, don't do that.
Yeah, having two elders is never ideal in any case. It is, I would argue it is better than none. But 3 is better. Any odd number is better because it eliminates the possibility of a 50-50 split in any decision. But all that does when you have only 2 is requires a lot more of these a lot more of these traits we're looking at for each one. Because what do you do whenever there's 2 elders and see differently? Requires a lot of humility. Yeah.
I was just looking at all those and I'm thinking, the elder needs to not just be that way with his church family, he needs to be that way with his own family
Mm-hmm.
and out in the public, or, I mean, that needs to be who he is,
Yeah.
not playing like that's who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Yeah, and
Paul's going to get to that too. Yeah.
see that. I feel like if somebody is not really that is going to come out.
Yeah, we're not talking about one strike and you're out, but if it is a habitual thing, it needs to be eradicated. Now, ideally, the man would be able to eradicate it himself by growing out of that. But if not, I said these are pre-qualifications, but they also are standing qualifications. So where do we get? Hospitable next. Pretty self-explanatory. Hospitable. One scholar said, Greek scholar said, in the Christian church it was the bishop acting as host on behalf of the local community who was this hospitable and offered a bed and shelter to traveling brothers. I'd take his word for it, but it certainly would fit in with Paul saying that an elder is to be hospitable. The next one is able to teach. Describes one who is skillful in teaching. Wayne Jackson said it involves a teacher who is informed regarding the information necessary for his role, in this case the Scriptures. He is wise in dealing with various personalities, and he is judicious in the application of truth to complicated life situations. Not always easy, but notice, though, that whatever else we might make of able to teach, it assumes that the elder will be a teacher, because otherwise, why would he need to be able to teach unless Paul is assuming that they will be teachers?
The Scriptures if you didn't talk about it.
What's that?
How would you know?
Oh, how would you know what? How would you know if he was knowledgeable? If he, yeah.
Exactly.
The good news is it's always possible to grow in knowledge, even at a snail's pace, is still growth. I want to hammer out this next one in verse 3 to close out here, so we don't have to deal with it next week, because it's one of the most controversial ones because it's confusing. Depending on your translation, and here I heavily would disagree with the ESV's rendition. ESV says, not a drunkard. Sounds obvious, slam dunk. I mean, what could there be to say? The word, however, is a little bit more complicated. The word means quarrelsome over wine, but anybody's translation say something different? Okay, not addicted to wine. That's even more. That's even more. Or not given to. Anybody's translation not have anything about alcohol whatsoever?
ASV doesn't.
What does it say?
No brawler.
ASV says no brawler. Now, That might leave you scratching your head a little bit. Not a drunkard, or not addicted to wine, or much wine, or whatever it says. Not a brawler? Must be that's got to be a mistranslation, right? Well, here's the thing. The Greek word there, if you take the two parts, it means it's para, which is beside, and oinos, which is wine. So you put them together, and it's one who tarries at wine. However, Greek scholars have noted that and observed that by the time this letter was written, in the first century, the concept of drunkenness had virtually totally faded from the word. So it's kind of like when we talk about our singing and worship and the Greek word psalo, which means to pluck the strings. Well, by the time Paul wrote Ephesians, the Greek word psalo had nothing to do with plucking strings. It meant sing, okay? And that's been pretty well established among Greek scholars. This word, the Greek scholars say, has nothing to do, the word drunkenness had nothing to do with it, but it was a caution, it referred to somebody who acts as if he is drunk. Yeah, so you think about what somebody, the stereotypical somebody who's had too much to drink. And yeah, the guy who's, picking bar fights and, he's rough and he's, roughhousing, horsing around, whatever, getting into starting stuff. That is apparently, according to Greek scholars, okay, not me, and that's why the American Standard Version translates that no brawler, because the concept of the actual drunkenness sort of faded out of the word, and it was used to refer to somebody who acts like that. Whether he's drunk or not is irrelevant. It's the behavior of one who is...
If he's drunk, he's not very sober-minded.
True. Literally not, anyway. Yeah, Dean?
That's what led to the downfall of Aaron's two sons. Supposedly, they had got drunk, and then they offered the strange fire. And as a result of that, we know that they were consumed, and we know that right after that, God said that they were not to drink any wine.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the reason I think this is important is because there's been so much argument about, well, this verse doesn't really say it's not wrong, or it's wrong for an elder to, have some wine every now and then. It says don't be addicted to it. And it's just the silliest, the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard for something like that. It's like saying the elder shouldn't be addicted to cocaine, which means he just do a little cocaine every now and then. All the other Christians can do cocaine whenever they want, but an elder, just do a little bit. Just don't be, as long as you're not addicted to the cocaine, right? Irrelevant. If that's the case, it's only wrong to be addicted to the wine. That doesn't say anything about whether or not you have a little bit. Whenever we understand that the concept of drunkenness had just evolved out of that term, and that term became, I can't think of an English equivalent of a word that we use that doesn't mean what it used to mean. What's that? Awesome. Okay, there's one.
Gay?
Okay, gay, yeah, that's one. Gay used to mean happy. Can you believe that? Nice is one too, and I don't know the exact historical. I'm pretty sure nice used to mean stupid. Way back when, like even before your time, okay? Just kidding. A long time ago, maybe in Old English, nice used to be used of somebody who is dumb, not smart, like me. I'm nice and not nice at the same time.
We know.
Yeah, why would I tell you? You know better than anybody.